Gareth, I think you're in the middle. Are we just about all there? Okay, good morning everyone. I cannot tell you what a pleasure it is to host this at Lipson. We've got a mixed audience, so just for your benefit, we have a number of Lipson students from ages from year 8 right through to some sixth form students who've just finished their A-level politics. We've got some VIP guests from Mac Primary. We've got a number of different teaching staff and support staff, so that's our audience. I guess what I need to do for the sake of the audience is just introduce our 2 guests. We have 3 guests coming, but one of our 3 candidates is stuck on the A38 behind a car crash. So we'll invite her in as and when she arrives. But it is a great pleasure to welcome Gareth Streeter as the Conservative candidate and Luke Pollard as the Labour candidate for the constituency of Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport. We're going to try and get through as many questions as we can. So we've been brief, we've had a little chat, we're going to go as kind of quick fire as we possibly can. And although we've got some pre-rehearsed questions, I think the fun bit will be just opening it up to the floor. So if you think of anything, if you want to interrupt at any point, put your hand up and we'll try and take as many questions as we possibly can. Right guys, first important job of the day, we're not allowed for anybody to go first because that would mean that we were having some kind of political bias, so we need to draw the names out of a hat. So I'm going to give you 1 each. Don't open it yet. And we'll decide the order for the opening address. So I'm going to say that whoever you've got is going to go first. So can you open your... So who's speaking first?
Gareth.
Okay, so Gareth goes first and we'll go second.
Luke Pollard.
So we've hit the jackpot. So we'll go Gareth, and we'll go Luke, and then we'll go Holly when Holly arrives. Thank you, Gareth. Gareth, over to you. Can I do it from there or wherever you prefer? Wherever you prefer.
Right, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hello everyone, my name is Gareth Streeter, as I think you've heard. As I think you've also heard, I'm the Conservative candidate for Plymouth Sutton and Devonport, which is the seat that we are in. I didn't always want to be in politics. When my first job after I'd finished school was as a youth worker. And I worked in youth work for many years. I then went on to work in education for an education charity, although I'm not actually a teacher, but I was doing other things, helping schools work out how best to run themselves and to deliver really good education for kids like you up and down the country. And I'm currently doing some work with some charities trying to bring an end to a terrible, terrible evil called child sexual abuse as well. So I'm really passionate about young people. Like all of you, I grew up in Plymouth. I went to a Plymouth school. I didn't go to Lipson. I went to a school called, well, first of all, St Boniface's. Have you heard of that? Have any of you got friends that go there? And then a school called Buckland. And I want to say, as long as you don't tell anyone St Boniface is this, I think Lipson is a much, much better school. So I'm really pleased to be here and speaking to you all today. I'm also passionate about young people because, believe it or not, I used to be one, although that was quite some time ago now. And I know that growing up in Plymouth, sometimes there is a fear that there aren't going to be the jobs and opportunities in our city that there should be. And one of the things that I am fighting for at this election is to make sure, and perhaps we'll talk about a bit more about this when we get to the questions, that when you grow up, there's good career opportunities so that you want to stay in Plymouth and bring up your own children in Plymouth when the time comes. I appreciate we're probably not thinking about kids just yet, but the time will come and I hope you choose Plymouth as that destination. I'm also really passionate to make sure you get the best education. I think you are getting the best education. One of the best things I think Conservatives have done in government is when we came in, this is a good school. When we came in, only 68, I think it was, % of schools were rated as good or better by Ofsted. Now it's 90%, so that's the vast majority of schools, and I'm pleased that we've helped teachers. It's teachers and you guys have done the hard work, but hopefully we've helped that happen in government as well. So I'm passionate about you getting a job, I'm passionate about you having the best education that will enable you to get it, and I'm passionate about you one day all being able to afford to buy your own home, and we're doing some good things to make that more possible for you as well. We're building more homes and we're going to make them cheaper to buy. I hope that a lot of this will come up in the questions, but this is just a brief introduction from me. I want to say as well, sorry Lee, we're going on a bit longer than we agreed we would, but I'm aware that trust in politics is at an all-time low at the moment, and part of the reason for that is how politicians behave and how we speak to each other. I just want to say from the outset that although I disagree with Luke on many things, I've actually known Luke for a long time. We don't know him particularly well, do we? We have known each other for a long time, and I do have respect for Luke. And Holly, who is joining us in a minute, I've only got to know Holly in the last couple of weeks, but again, I've heard what she's saying. Although I disagree, I've got huge respect for her, and I think she's a really valuable person to be in politics. So I hope that there's a tone of respect that characterises our debate today, and I hope that goes a little way to restoring some of your confidence in politics and politicians.
Thank you very much. That tone of respect is shared by the staff that are in here this morning, but I'm sure it will. Mr. Reynolds.
Hello Lipson, good to see you. My name is Luke Pollard and I'm the Labour and Cooperative Party candidate, and so I share some of the cooperative values that you've probably been taught about in this school. I'm proud to be a Janner, so I was born in Plymouth, I live in this constituency, and whether you were a Janner by birth or a Janner by choice, I want Plymouth to be a place where everyone can get on and fulfil their potential. But at the moment, things aren't going the way they should be. Nearly all our public services are broken in one way, shape or form. Lots of people are waiting on an NHS waiting list, so it's harder to get an operation. Mental health support isn't what it is, especially for young people that can sometimes struggle. We know that we're not doing enough to cut carbon and protect nature in the wider world. In Westminster, I've been very vocal as Plymouth's first out MP about the need to have a more inclusive environment where we are valuing people and celebrating the diversity that we have, because it shouldn't matter who you are, what colour your skin is, who you fall in love with, what religion you have. Everyone should be able to be authentically true to themselves, and sadly we're seeing a rise in hate crime over recent years, and these are things that we need to tackle. Now, I think Plymouth is a brilliant place to live, but I want it to be better. And to make it better, we've got to build more affordable homes. In particular, I want to build 5,000 homes in the city centre. That means building upwards, because there's about 18,000 people on a housing waiting list in Plymouth. And it's really hard for getting the homes that people need. We also need to make sure we're cutting the cost of living. That means making it cheaper, with cheaper electricity and gas, by having a publicly owned renewable energy company that generates clean, green energy for our city. And we also need to be making sure that we're getting our public services back on their feet, the NHS in particular, which is really important to imagine to quite a lot of you about the care that you're receiving. But I'm really keen to get to your questions, so I'll end there. But it's great to be back at this school. I've been in here plenty of times. I've seen some of the drama productions that you put on in here. It's a good school, as Gareth said. But I want every school to be even better, with more teachers and more support, especially more support for young people with SEND and mental health concerns, because that means everyone is able to fulfil their potential, which is what we should be aiming for. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's get straight into the questions. Most of the kind of pre-prepared questions are from our A-level politics group, so I'm going to start with Sienna. Sienna, could you ask your question from the floor, please?
Should the voting age be lowered to 16?
Could you hear that at the back? Yeah. So, Gareth, do you want to start by answering that one? Should the voting age be lowered to 16?
Hello, Sienna. Thank you for your question. I'm not crazy about lowering the voting age to 16. I think there's no hard and fast rule as to what age people suddenly become qualified to make a good choice. There's no doubt, I've got no doubt whatsoever, that there's some 40-year-olds who can make a very informed choice about who to vote for, and some 44-year-olds who would struggle to do so. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. It just seems to me that at the age of the moment is 18, I think it's quite useful for someone to start becoming a little bit more politically politically engaged as they become 14, 15, 16, and they just have a couple of years to think about it all before they actually finally start voting. So I don't see any, there's nothing written in the stars that says voting at 16 is a bad idea, but I don't really see any reason to move it from where it is at the moment. And once you're voting, you'll be doing it for the rest of your life, so I think it's good to just have a bit of time to pause, reflect, and see what you think about the world before you put your pen in the ballot box for the first time.
Thank you. Luke?
So, thanks for your question, Tina. I think votes for 16 and 17-year-olds is a good thing. Wales and Scotland have introduced votes for 16 and 17-year-olds for the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament, and shock news, the sky has not fallen in. What's happened is young people have got engaged with politics, and perhaps most importantly, politicians have had to spend more time focusing on young people. Because young people, I think, have borne the brunt of the austerity cuts since 2010. They've lost a lot of the services and support they used to have, and we, I think, should be making it easier for politicians to listen to young people and for young people to get involved with politics. But the point I do agree with Gareth on is just because you're over the age of 18 doesn't make you more qualified, I think, to make a decision. There's loads of people I canvass by knocking on doors who still don't know who they're voting for and don't know what's happening in the world around them. And that's the job of all politicians, to increase awareness, increase knowledge. And I think young people should have a voice. And for folks of you that aren't 18 in this election, you might not have a vote, but you do have a voice. So find those people in your family, it could be carers, guardians, parents, family members, let them know what you want. Because even if you can't put a cross in the box, you can still have your voices heard and persuade others of the merits of your argument to influence how they vote.
Thank you. Sienna, do you have a view?
I personally believe that being lower would probably be a better idea because it would increase the amount of people that vote, and it would, because I know 16-year-olds who are smarter than 25-year-olds. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Second question. I'm going to take my heart in my hands. Mr. Reynolds, you have a question. He believes that I believe that somebody has shaken your faith in politicians.
Yeah. So the last 5 years has shaken my faith in politics and the political system. What will you both do to change this?
Luke, you want to go this time? Yeah.
So I agree. I think our politics is broken. I've been saying it since I was elected in 2017, and I've seen some appalling behaviour in Westminster. I've been amazed at how bad it is, but I've also been amazed at how it's supported. And so I've been calling out sexual abuse in Westminster, calling out the sex pests that prey on young people, not just young women, but young men that work in Parliament. People that feel they're protected because of their job that they do. That's not acceptable. I can't stand PMQs. Prime Minister's questions, the debates on Wednesday, you see on the news, I hate it. I stand by the Speaker's chair so I can get out first. You have to be there, it's compulsory to be there, but watching grown men, and it's normally grown men, shout at each other, I think is appalling. But we've also seen the trust in the people in the higher office degraded. So the parties during lockdown. So when you were at home studying during lockdown, doing the right thing to protect people from getting the virus, people in Downing Street were having parties. That's not right. When they gave out £1 million contracts to their mates, making their mates really rich, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. As we're seeing at the moment, people with insider knowledge potentially about the date of the election tried to make money for themselves by placing bets on the election before it was public. That's not right. It doesn't have to be like this. I think we can do politics in a better way. I think we can restore stability. That means not changing prime ministers every 5 minutes, not having the civil war in the government that we've seen. I think we can do better. But I think we have to do it by showing it, not just promising it. Because I think trust in politics has fallen so much over the last decade in particular, that just saying we'll do it better is not enough. I think if Labour gets elected on the 4th of July, we have to demonstrate it by showing those higher standards, by showing a different way of doing politics. And that means not shouting each other down, that means not using insults. I get insults on social media from elected Tories locally, it's not a great look. I don't think you should do that. You shouldn't use slurs, insults, and abuse. You should rise above, and you should try and show that this is a privilege to do this job, it's a privilege to represent the community, and you should behave better than children in the playground. And at the moment, children in playgrounds behave better than some MPs, and that's not right.
Gareth?
I agree with some of what Luke said, but not all of it. And just in the spirit of, I suppose, cross-party honesty, I think we'd have to concede that both Labour and Conservative elected representatives can let themselves down on social media with the comments that they make to each other. I don't think that's confined to party. I've certainly had some interesting remarks from some of your council colleagues, and that does go with the territory to a large extent. And in politics, you have to be prepared to put up with a fair bit of that. But actually, if we want to encourage more people, and particularly perhaps the more thoughtful and more sensitive people to get involved, which is desperately what we need, then I think we do need to look at how we talk to each other, partly on social media, partly in other forums as well. The truth is, people unfortunately have a habit of letting people down. And when people are powerful, they let you down quite powerfully. I don't think that is true of one party. I don't think that's true of just politicians. But I think it's been particularly bad with a number of politicians recently, be that politicians that aren't perceived to have paid the tax that they should have paid, or others that haven't delivered on their promises. I think there's two really crucial things. The first is what I spoke about when I was up there, which is that we locally have to do what we can to own the right tone. And for the most part, this is our third, isn't it, Hustings together. I think that's, do you think? I think that's been a reasonable tone that we've had. I think there's been mutual respect. Now that's not going to make the 10 o'clock news, or be on TikTok. But it is a starting point, and that's the only place that we can start. I think the other problem is politicians. Has anyone ever heard the phrase, maybe I'm looking at year 12 politics, democracy is the worst system apart from all the others? Has anyone heard that? It's a Winston Churchill quote, and it says that, democracy is the only way. It would be terrible if we had any other form of government. But it's got big problems. And one of the big problems is, because we're all trying to get votes, and let's be honest, when you come out, absolutely like to vote for him, I'd like you to vote for me. We are all trying to get votes. We're not always honest with people about the difficult decisions that have to be made and the things that we can't do. As a result, we don't necessarily, not all politicians lie, some do, but they have to let people believe we're going to be able to do more than we are, and therefore we don't deliver, we don't disappoint. And that's one of the reasons that Tony Blair's support, somewhat unfairly actually, evaporated, when I was younger and he was the Prime Minister, because people didn't believe he would end up doing the things that he did in terms of his foreign policy, the war with Iraq. But that's going back to ancient history now. What I'm doing personally to address it is I'm not trying to promise the earth in my campaign, but I'm just focusing on three really specific things. One, I want to build more jobs for young people, and I'm going to do that by protecting some special laws we've got in Plymouth, which enables us to have a free port, which means we can bring more jobs. The second is I want to get more doctors and GPs and dentist appointments across the city, because that's a big issue. And the third thing I want to do is I want to work with schools, charities and community groups to stop younger people and older people struggling with loneliness, because I believe that's a huge issue which is actually affecting our mental health and our physical health. So those are my three big promises. And if I am elected and I'm sat here in 4 or 5 years' time, those are the things that I want to be able to sit here and tell you I've made progress on.
Thank you. Just before we move on from this, am I allowed to ask what either of you or both of you, your view before we leave the city of Plymouth about the shenanigans in Plymouth Moorview? Just be really interested on a Conservative and a Labour viewpoint in terms of Fred Thomas and Johnny Mercer and their profile at the moment.
Shall we go first? I'm sure you've got some thoughts. You probably all know this, but Plymouth has got 3 MPs. So there's Luke's job, Plymouth Sutton and Devonport. There's Plymouth Moorview, which is in the north of Plymouth, and then there's South West Devon, which is Plymouth Stock, and then a bit of the surrounding areas of Plymouth. So it's kind of 2.5 MPs altogether. So that means in this election there's 3 Conservatives, 3 Labour, and then all the other parties standing. What I like about the team we've got as Conservatives is we're all really different. So you've got, I don't suppose any of you here would be in Plymouth or Plymouth Stock. But any of you, yeah? Plymouth or Plymouth Stock? So my friend Rebecca Smith, who I've known for 30 years, is standing for candidate there. And she's just a wonderful person. She spent her life working in charities. She gets on with everyone, she brings people around the table. I'm a bit of a nerd, and so I help us get across all the numbers, all the details of different situations. And then Johnny Mercer in Plymouth Moorview, he's kind of like our bad boy, and he kind of breaks the rules a little bit. But he breaks the rules in a really good way, because people are fed up with the way politicians talk. They're fed up with the tried and tested scripts that we all try out. And I can be guilty of this, I know I can. And he's a breath of fresh air. And he brings a new tone and a new way of doing things. And he's backed all of that up through years of experience in the military where he's fought for our country. So Johnny does politics differently to how I would do it. And one of the things he has done recently is his Labour opponent, he's called him out on what Johnny feels was his Labour opponent being less than honest about the way that he had served in the military. It was all blown up over social media. That's not the way I would do politics. I just don't think I'm that kind of guy. But I like the fact Johnny does things differently. I like the fact that he's a bit ballsy, that he's a bit brazen, and people like it because he's speaking to a group of people that no one's ever really spoken to before.
I'm sure you have a view. So bear in mind that Mac Primary are within the Longview constituency.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of Johnny's abuse on social media since I was first elected. He went through a period of describing me as toxic all the time, which is my favourite Britney Spears song. So I was opening with elements of that. But I don't think you should use flirting songs of abuse. What's happened in Plymouth Sutton recently is that Johnny Mercer, who is the Veterans Minister, the Minister for people who have served our country in the military, has attacked his Labour opponent, Fred, because of his service. Now, Fred can't tell people what he did in the military because of what he did in the military. It's recent and it's secret. So he can't say what he did. Johnny knows that, and Johnny's attacking him anyway because of something that Fred did not say. And this is a tactic that politicians use when throwing mud. You throw mud at your opponents, and you keep doing it until something sticks, until you've got an attack on them. Now, for me, this shows how desperate he has become. But it also shows how bad that he thinks he's losing. Because if you think you're winning a campaign, you don't throw mud at your opponents, because you've already beaten them, right? But if you are thinking you're losing, you throw mud. Now, there are people in the Conservative Party and the Labour Party who fought for our country, who served our country, who served in uniform, right? You don't ever attack their service. That is an unwritten rule in politics across both parties, especially when you're the Veterans Minister, whose job it is to look after people who served. I think it's really disappointing, if I'm honest. I think it shows a really bad bit of our politics. He's accusing Fred of something Fred has not said, and that's not great, I don't think. But just remember that if you're seeing a politician throw mud, and Fred's not responding to that mud throwing, because it's not true, I think that shows that you're on the wrong side of politics, and you're probably, despite being a bad word politics, as Gareth suggested, I think you could probably do politics a wee bit better than that, I think.
But Fred has clarified that what was said about his military service, not by Fred, but by the Guardian, wasn't true, hasn't he? He has now clarified that.
So, in respect of Fred having not said what Johnny accused him of saying, Fred's consistent. He did not say what he was accused of saying. That's absolutely right. So when Johnny Mercer has accused him of saying something, he's still not said it, right? And what we haven't had is an apology from Johnny. What we haven't had is a commitment from Johnny not to use slurs and mud throwing in this election campaign. It's a bit desperate. I'm just a bit disappointed. I think we deserve better than that, actually, as a city. But let's get back to the issues, rather than Johnny Mercer's back.
Mr. Reynolds, any thoughts on the answers there to the questions?
Nothing to add.
That's fine. Let's move the topic. And Emily, a question on the LGBTQ and community.
Hi. So I'm wondering what a government led by each of your parties would do to support the rights of the LGBT communities, particularly in youth.
Gareth, do you want to start? Yeah.
So, LGBTQ. So, this is something that's changed so much since I was at school. So, I'm gay, Luke and I are both gay. And it's funny because when I was growing up, until I was 15, I don't think there were any gay MPs in Devon or Cornwall, probably, anywhere in our part of the world. Now here, you're spoiled for choice. You're very unlikely not to have a gay MP in the scene almost whatever happens. So the world has changed a lot, and I think we should celebrate that. School was pretty horrific, to be honest. 20 years ago, if you were gay. Now I think it's still very hard, particularly with trans or non-binary, and dealing with things that perhaps the world doesn't quite know how to handle yet. And I think the most important thing any government could that I will do if I'm elected is to support everyone to absolutely be free to be themselves and to ensure that we have a culture where everyone is respected and everyone is tolerated. Now, I believe that part of that means you also have to respect and tolerate people that aren't necessarily fully signed up to the LGBT agenda. There has to be freedom for people to feel that they may have different views, maybe for religious reasons, maybe for other reasons about LGBT issues, and we should be able to be strong enough to have some tolerance and some resilience to that as a society. The one other just thing, and this is me sort of stepping out of a kind of political hat and going into a bit of a kind of dad or an uncle kind of mentality, but I worry a little bit with people now, with the LGBTQI movement. We're not letters, we're people, and it's absolutely important that we find beautiful ways to describe who we are, that serve us, that help us have good conversations about it, but we don't want to jump out of the closet where we weren't allowed to be ourselves because we were constrained to be something different in public, and go into another kind of closet where we feel we have to act in an LGBTQI way and only hang out and talk to other LGBTQI people. It's really important that we let, and you as a generation, get more beautiful personality shine for who they are, and let that be the centre of your identity, and not anything to do with gender, sexuality, which are important, but they're not the centre of who you are.
Thank you.
When I was elected in 2017, I became Plymouth's first out Member of Parliament. I am probably not the first gay Member of Parliament, but I'm certainly the first one who's out. And that created some opportunities for people who didn't believe in my right to exist, my right to fall in love. I've had my office vandalised with homophobic slurs and graffiti. I've had abuse in the streets. And I posted a picture of me and my fiance for Valentine's Day. Wow, the abuse that you get from there. And for me, that shows that we are still not at a place where people can celebrate the diversity that we have in our communities, and where we can be happy with people for just being who they are. Now, since I've been elected, I've been making the case, because I feel I have a responsibility as Plymouth's first out MP. I've been standing up on LGBT issues, been making speeches in support of our trans and non-binary friends, arguing strongly for a trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy, which is part of Labour's manifesto, which we will deliver. That's been in the Tory manifestos for a while, and then kind of stepped away from that pledge due to pressure from their right wing. My frustration is, I don't want the LGBT community to be a political football. At the moment, their force is focusing on trans people, right? But the people that are funding those movements, well, many of them won't stop at trans people. As we've seen attacks on age-appropriate sex and relationship education, about whether LGBT families should even be mentioned in those. They want to attack other types of LGBT equality. And so I think we need to make the case that our equality is good for everybody. It's not just good for LGBT people, it's good for everybody. And that is an argument that we still have to win. And if I was also taking my politician hat off at the end and put my campaign hat on, I think one thing that LGBT campaigners need to be doing, like myself and others, is making more of an effort to take people with us. Because there are folks who are still a bit uncertain, especially around some of the updates that are absolutely necessary that we will deliver to update the Gender Recognition Act, as well as protecting single-sex spaces, who are not yet convinced by some of those things. And instead of marginalising them and pushing them away, I think we have to take more of an effort to listen to those concerns and convince them. The way you win an equality campaign is different to the way you win a war. The way you win a war is by defeating the enemy, killing them, moving off the battlefield. The way you win an equality campaign is by persuading the people who disagree with you to change their minds. And that's what we still have to do, especially when it comes to trans and non-binary people. We've made good progress on the LGBT bits, but not necessarily on the T and some of the plus elements, which still have to do more. So there's more to do, but we'll deliver a trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy, we'll update the Gender Recognition Act, and we won't be using LGBT communities as a political football. That's what you'll get with the Labour government.
Thank you. Emily, any thoughts?
Yes, I agree with the general inclusivity there, yeah.
Okay, before we go to Daisy, I'm going to go rogue for a couple of minutes. Has anybody got any questions that weren't submitted in advance, of anything that you've heard so far, or any burning issues that you'd like to ask the candidates? Yes, please.
I'd like to ask about the education thing with the Conservatives, about the mandatory English and maths with A-levels. Do you agree with that?
I do, I'm afraid. I mean, you just got your maths mark, haven't you? And I'll just say to you, I'm so glad I've got a new place because I was terrible at maths. It's been a real problem in my career. I've worked, I'm a writer basically. As I've gone in more to owning my own business, which is something I've done as a writer, I've realised my maths has let me down on a few times, and I'm afraid in today's workplace, I don't love this because I was not a great maths student when I was at school, and I'm not great now, but in today's workplace you need a higher level of both numeracy and of literacy. I think it's really important though that you couldn't just expect schools to keep doing it without giving them any extra support or any extra funding. And one of the things that I really like about Rishi Sunak is he has really reinvested in education. There's now more money in education to be able to there's ever been. And part of that is to extend is to be able to extend teaching maths, which is the problem there, which is the subject. It's quite hard to get teachers for nationally. I don't know so whether it is locally fit for you guys or not, but certainly that's the one to get hard nationally. So I think it is a good idea to put the money where your mouth is, and I'm afraid you will need it later on in life.
Luke, if I just build on that, and so this subject squeeze that we've seen over the last 10 years has squeezed the curriculum more on English and maths, and Gareth is right, that is necessarily the workplace. But we've lost from that drama, arts, some modern languages, and do you know what? Those parts of our economy are really important as well, right? So we're squeezing the subjects by trying to make everyone learn the same type of stuff. We've, I think, lost some of that diversity from education and helped a whole range of young people succeed. What we haven't had is the funding to make it work. So we've got a plan to hire 6,500 more teachers with a focus on hiring maths teachers because we've got the policy but without the funding to really deliver it. And one of the bits that's worth looking at here is the regional inequality. So I talk a lot in Westminster about our fair share. Because I'm proud to be a Janner, and I don't think we're worth any less than any other part of the country. But when it comes to school funding, the South West, I'm talking the wider area rather than just Plymouth, each young person in class is worth £300 less than the national average. For no apparent good reason, the spending formula for schools discriminates against the South West. If you work out how many people are in your class using those math skills and times it by 300, that's how many our schools are missing compared to the average. Now, I don't think you're worth any less than any other school, right? But that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be a cross-party campaign with MPs elected from all parties saying the South West deserves our fair share. So if we don't have that fair share funding, you won't have the teachers, the equipment, the facilities, the SEND support, the teaching assistants we really need. And I know that there have been Tory MPs arguing this as well. We haven't really won that argument yet, but we need to, because we want all our teachers and our schools in every subject to have the resources they need for everyone to get on.
Thank you. Daisy, do you just want to follow that up with your education question?
Yeah.
Just broadens it out a little bit more.
With the feeling among many that schools are in decline, with some classrooms falling into disrepair and teachers being asked to teach out of their subject specialities, how do you plan to repair the education system in this country if elected?
So Luke, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, so there's a number of things in your question. Let's quickly rattle through them. It is unacceptable that we have schools with racks and a crumbly concrete that have basically meant that classrooms can't be taught in and have been sealed off. That is unacceptable. We don't have a lot of rack in Plymouth, which is good. We've got loads on the military bases, but very, very little on the education estate. There's other parts of the country where that is not true, where it affects nearly every school in the area. So that needs to be gotten sort of, and if I'm speaking honestly, it hasn't been, and it needs to be, because you can't have children taught in unsafe classrooms, right? It's just a given, okay? So we need to fix that straight away, okay? And that means investing in the capital funding for buildings to fix that. We also need to make sure we're hiring enough teachers. So you have to do two things with the teaching staff. First of all, you have to have enough of them. That's why we need to put more teachers in there. I'll pledge to hire 6,500 teachers as one of our first steps. Will help that. But you have to retain the teachers you've got. And if you're looking at public sector pay as one of the reasons that teachers are leaving, quite a lot of teachers have had a below inflation pay rise, which means a real terms pay cut for much of the last 14 years. That's really put pressure on their ability to pay their bills. It's also created an atmosphere where morale is actually quite low. Now, teaching is an amazing profession. My mum was a teacher. It really is fantastic to do, but we need to value the teachers more to get in there. I'm in favour of reducing some of the administration that goes on in schools and some of the over-testing, which I don't think always helps. But we do need to make sure that we're getting more supported. What would help teachers as well is making sure that we are getting more mental health support in schools. So what Labour's proposing is we close the VAT loophole on private schools, which means if you send your child to a private school, you don't pay VAT. Use that money to hire more teachers in state schools, and make sure that we're putting a mental health worker in every secondary school. Now that's especially important for young people that are struggling to access camp services or have long waiting lists. That won't be for the advanced mental health. There'll still be professionals elsewhere in the NHS for that, but it will help people to be able to support that, and that will support teachers as well as support every young individual to get on. And there's other things we can do around SEND, but I'll let Gareth reply, so I've spoken for a long time.
So Gareth, the wider education, how can we mend the education system?
Well, this is something I'm very passionate about. For a number of years I worked for a charity that took over some schools that had quite a lot of difficulties, and the job was to put them on track, get them teaching better, looking after their young people better, and by and large they were very successful in doing that. I don't think the education system is broken. Schools are doing better than they've ever done in this country, in England. Not only are young people doing better as a whole, better readers, better attainment, but the thing I'm really passionate about is it used to be the case that if you were from a less advantaged background financially, you would perform considerably less well than other people at school, in your class, in your school. Now that's still true, but the gap is much, much smaller than it used to be. And that is down primarily to the hard work of teachers and the hard work of students, but there are also policies that this government, actually that was started by Labour, but Labour have sort of become less keen on them now. You know, the school is an academy, made it easier for schools to become academies, which means it's easier to get fresh leadership and fantastic head teachers into schools. It makes it easier to get to recruit good staff, and give schools a bit more control over doing what they think is best for the young people in their school, rather than necessarily having to follow national rules on every specific individual thing. There's a wrong with following national frameworks when they work well. So schools aren't doing better. And they could be doing even better still, absolutely. Part of it is about money. And I'm pleased that the Conservatives have really restored, first of all, when Rishi Sunak first became Prime Minister, he restored education spending to the highest it had ever been, and he's gone further than how it's now higher than it's ever been. And we'll continue to see that trend, I think, if Rishi Sunak remains Prime Minister. So money is important, but money isn't everything. And when I was first working in this education charity, the government then, it was a Labour government, were wasting an awful lot of money. They were building new school buildings, which was fantastic, but they were spending 25 million on a new school building when 5 million would be absolutely sufficient. So there was a lot of wastage in spending things on what were the priority, which meant there were a number of years where it was harder to focus on the priorities for spending. But we're back on track now. Schools are doing well, teachers are doing a great job. We need to continue backing them to do even better jobs still.
I can see Mr. Reynolds has got his hand up on. I will come to you, sir. Has anybody else got any thoughts while we're on the topic of education? Oh God. Mr. Boyce.
Can I ask Mr. Streeter, can I just ask you where your evidence is that the gap is closing between the working class children and other children? Because the evidence points to progress rate, attainment rate, that children are doing better in the main, and the gap isn't closing, and it hasn't closed for 20 years. So what evidence are you using to talk with conviction that the gap is actually or has closed?
The gap has closed significantly since 2010, since we came in and started pioneering the Academy project. There will be, of course, as you know, will know best than I will, there will be different subsets of groups within that. So, for example, it might be the attainment gap specifically with white boys from, to use that horrible phrase, lower quartile backgrounds, hasn't lifted so much. I don't have all the stats in front of me. I am confident that attainment gap has closed. It's something I can check and follow up there on specifics. I don't have the specific right now, but it was something I spent a number of years working in.
Mr. Reynolds?
One more to do with academisation. How has that made it easier to recruit staff and make the positive changes that you alluded to?
Well, I think the key, so first of all, I'm not wedded to any model for the sake of a model. So the key thing is what that model brings. And I think the main thing that academisation has done is it's brought fresh leadership. I think that would be number one. And therefore, good leaders attract good staff. It's not that there aren't huge challenges with staff recruitment, because there are a number, and over the time we've been doing academy, done an and flow just to the specifics as to what they are. This would have been less true with an academy like Lipson, but the academies that I used to work with were schools that had a very, very, very poor reputation in their local community. So academisation presented the opportunity to give them a new name, to give them a new identity, to bring a new uniform, which just helped create a culture change and a perception change in the local community, which again can be helpful in terms of attracting staff. So at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You have all done a fantastic job. Schools are better than they were. 90% of schools are good or outstanding. I agree it's not about the model per se, but I think the model has been able to introduce some core benefits in this case.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Before we move on to Aidan and Lexi, I just wonder if any of our friends from that primary, I thought you might, I knew you'd have a question.
How do you plan to lower the rate of carbon emissions?
That's a really good question. Sorry for this one.
Go on then.
So our carbon emissions are too high at the moment. We have cut them as a country. They have come down, but they're not coming down fast enough for us to stop the global temperature rises that we know will melt the ice caps. We know will create huge amounts of desertification and habitat loss around the world. So we need to go faster on reducing carbon, but we also need to go faster on protecting nature. And we live in a climate and nature crisis, and the nature crisis is really important as well. So I don't want to forget that bit. But you asked about carbon. So one of the first things we'll do is we'll create a new energy company called GB Energy that will be owned by the public rather than owned by private individuals. And they'll invest in onshore wind, offshore wind, and solar. Because I don't want to renationalise energy companies that are doing stuff with oil and gas. That's the fuel of gas. I want to do it with the fuels of the future, which is renewable. And in Plymouth, we are one of the best cities in the country for the study of offshore renewable energy at Plymouth University. We are really good at this. We've got loads of potential to create some jobs there. Then we need to insulate homes, because in our city, quite a lot of our homes are not well insulated. That's the way they were built a long time ago. We need to insulate more homes. We need to make sure that new homes that are being built to a higher standard of environmental regulation. So we're building new homes with good standards so that they have lower energy bills and use less carbon. I want to transition faster to get rid of diesel and petrol engines with electric, but to do that, we both need to create a better charging infrastructure, so the charging points, we don't have enough of them in the southwest, for instance, and we need to make those cars cheaper. And so there's a bit of a challenge about how you do that. On nature, just to say, you either solve both of those challenges together or you solve neither of them. And we need to make sure we're protecting habitats and looking after nature just as much as doing that. And one of the reasons for that is, if I was to say to you, we measure carbon in tonnes, don't we? If we had a tonne of carbon in this room here, how big would it be? The reason I ask that question is because the basic unit that we talk about in terms of carbon is something that almost nobody knows about, and it can be hard to understand. People don't really feel they can change the carbon. In answer to my question, a tonne of carbon at normal atmospheric pressure is about a bubble the size of 2 double-deckers high. So you can absolutely fill this space here. That's what a tonne of carbon in gas form looks like. But I bet you all know what a tree looks like. We can plant more trees. I bet you all know what clean rivers look like, i.e. the stuff without the poo floating down because the sewage companies are releasing it. And I bet you all know what a bee looks like. That's why we want to ban bee-killing pesticides to protect bees. So you've got to do both, and if you take people on a journey around nature, they're more likely to be able to go faster on reducing carbon as well. So both of those are important.
Gareth?
So it's a great question, it's a very important question. So what we've got to remember with our carbon reduction, which is what you've really already said, is the goal is saving the planet. So the UK, although in some ways it's a big country, what the UK does is in and of itself significant, particularly to lower global emissions, because we're only 1% of them. However, What does happen in our country is that if we find a way of doing something that works well, other countries tend to copy us. And that's why it's so important we get it right, because then if we set not just an example for other countries, but create a model and a way of doing it that works, it's more likely to be adopted by other countries. So I think that there's two really crucial things in that. So one is we have to show how we can make it work without making it really, really expensive for people and making people who maybe already don't have very much money even poorer. And the second thing we have to do is we have to find a way of reducing emissions that don't just mean more emissions are produced in another part of the world, because we're going to buy things that we made by emissions elsewhere, even though we're not making them here anymore. And I agree with a lot of what Lucas said in terms of the approach to do that. And the key thing is we've got to invest and find other sources of energy so that we can power all the different things we need to do in a cleaner way. So we've done a huge amount of that. As Lucas said, we've made progress. We've halved our emissions since 1992, which sounds a very, very long time away to people like you, but it wasn't that long ago actually. And we've continued to be one of the European countries that's made the most progress in doing it. In recent years, we've got we managed to open the 5 biggest wind farms in the world, so that's what we need to carry on doing. We're investing more in nuclear power as well, which will be another important way of powering us. But what we're saying, and this is what's different to what Luke is saying, a lot of this the parties agree on, but we're saying we think we should set a deadline of 2050 to do it, because if we think we're trying to do it too early, what we'll end up doing is just shipping it all into other countries who will use even dirtier carbon than we're using, make the problem worse, and then pretend we've solved it when we haven't really.
Thank you. Happy with the answers? Right, we're going to change things a little bit. I'm going to put a 90-second limit on answers now, just so we can get through a few more questions. Aidan.
Grand Chapel recently eliminated supermajority.
Gareth, do you want to take that one first?
Nothing's ever inevitable, because at the end of the day, a week's a long time in politics and there's still over a week to go, so people could change their mind. Look, I'll be honest with you, I find it very difficult. I've been following politics most of my life. I find it very difficult to see any other alternative than a Labour majority government. It's not what I want, but I recognise that that's where we are, and if that is where we are, then what my party's going to have to do is ask some questions as to why that's happened and make sure that we are able to come back fighting quickly, because I am convinced that it won't be long before the country turns to us wanting a strong alternative to what Labour are going to provide. Although I know they'll do their best and they'll do some good things, I don't think they're offers right for this country.
Luke?
If you want change, you've got to vote for it. So one of the things about saying, oh, there'll be a supermajority, is it's a very clever political trick. It's a part of a tactic called voter suppression. And it means you discourage people from voting. You say, oh, well, they're going to win anyway, so you don't really have to vote. Or they're going to win anyway, so you can vote for one of the minor parties, as you don't have to worry about voting Labour. Well, you only get change if you vote for it. Now, they didn't make that argument when Boris Johnson won an 80-seat majority. They didn't make that argument when Labour won the 175-seat majority in 1997. Why don't they make it now? Right, because they're trying to suppress the vote. They don't have anything left that's positive to say in this campaign. So they're just going negative, right? I want Labour to win. I want us to get Labour MPs across the southwest. I want us to have a stronger voice in Parliament than we've had over the last 14 years for our region, with more Labour MPs making a case. We still need to win those seats. The polls look amazing, right? But having knocked on doors, they're much closer on the doors, especially in the north of Plymouth, where things are much closer still, right? So by saying you don't really have to vote, they're going to win anyway, right? It discourages people from voting, which makes it more likely that Conservatives can get a few more extra seats in that process. So just beware people saying that. It's a clever political trick, but if you want change, you have to vote for it. That is as true today as it has ever been.
And just before we move on, again, 90 seconds, but couldn't help but notice Nigel Farage speaking to 2,000 people in Newton Abbot last night. I'd just love to hear the Conservative view and then the Labour view on whether Reform and Nigel Farage are going to be detrimental to either party.
Well, it depends what you mean by detrimental. I mean, it's difficult to look at the polls and not think that Nigel Farage is drawing votes from people who might otherwise vote Conservative. So, in that sense, yes, they'll be detrimental. But look, we shouldn't be scared of democracy, because despite me saying earlier it's the worst system apart from all the others, it's brilliant. And we have put life in society and have democracy. So rather than me sit here criticising Nigel Farage, who I don't agree with on very much, who I don't think probably deep down has the best interests of the country at heart, say I shouldn't criticise him, I've just criticised him, haven't I? But rather than fearing him, what I need to do, and to some extent what I need to do, is understand why so many people are listening to what he's saying, and why he appeals to so many people, understand their concerns, their fears, and their hopes, and see what we can do to address it. Because I don't think Nigel Farage has the answers that he believes he does and that he's claiming he does.
And the Labour view on reform?
I'm not a big Nigel Farage fan. I'll be honest, he's not really my cup of tea. I disagree with him on nearly everything. However, he does speak for a group of society that other politicians haven't been able to speak to, and that is a challenge for us to win people round. But I would just be cautious about any of the smaller parties in general offering really simple solutions to really complex problems. And I would further advise caution where those really simple solutions to really complex problems blame a group of people over there. Not necessarily you over there, but like
Your fault.
blame a group of people, in particular a minority group. And I would just be cautious about how that's approached, because I think the job of politicians is to bring people together, is to build bridges, not building walls between us. And I'm not convinced, in fact I'm pretty convinced that is not Nigel Farage's view on how to do things. He wants to scare a smaller group of people to become more and more scared, rather than build bridges between our communities. I think that's not what Britain needs, but all the politicians have a challenge to make sure that we're presenting a positive, hopeful case to those voters that don't necessarily buy into what either Gareth or myself are saying at the moment.
And Lexi, that leads beautifully into your question.
So I would like to know what your respective parties would do to counter illegal and the spike in illegal migration to the UK.
So illegal immigration, basically, is the question. Luke, you want to start with that?
So, really good question. So, the government's lost control of borders, right? We've had some of the highest small boats crossings in recent years, happening very recently. And we have this massive backlog in unprocessed people that have arrived and hasn't done it. We've spent, or the government spent, £500 million, which is £500 million, sending 0 people to Rwanda. That is a hideous waste of money. It's a gimmick that doesn't work. So we want to stop spending that money on Rwanda, which is just a way of burning cash in the corner, right? And make sure we're spending that on a secure border command that protects our borders, better collaboration between ourselves and our French partners, more stabilisation in region that prevents people travelling in the first place, but processes the applications. Because even under the Conservatives 5 years ago, it took on average about a year to have an asylum application process. Okay? It's now 5 years. So that means there's more people in asylum hotels. There's more people who aren't being productive either for themselves, for our country, and costing the taxpayer. It costs £8 million a day just to house those people on that asylum backlog. So we want to hire 3,000 caseworkers to bring that backlog down. Because if you've got a case to be in the UK, right, your asylum case should be processed. You should be able to free persecution, war, and hideous treatment. And as an MP, I've been really proud to stand up for lots of our asylum seekers and asylum seeker families in Plymouth. Because we're a dispersal city. We have people that come to Plymouth for sanctuary. I'm really proud of that. But equally, for those people who don't have a case to be in the UK, we should be able to return them. That's not to send them off to Rwanda, because no one's ever going to go there. That's just incomplete. It's to return them. But we lost what's called a returns agreement, which is a legal agreement between the UK and a different country to return people. We lost lots of those agreements with Brexit. I'm not really sure why the government didn't carry them over, but they didn't. So we have to get new returns agreements so we can actually return people who don't have a right to a case to be in the UK. But I think immigration is on the whole a good thing if it can be well managed. I don't think the system is being well managed at the moment, and it creates animosity and hate between folks, and I think we have to challenge that as well. But ultimately, many of the people that raise immigration on the doors to me aren't complaining about the people, they're complaining that we haven't built enough houses, that our public services are falling over. That's what they're actually complaining about when you go below what their top line concern may be. But we've got a lot of work to do, and that's why that secure border command is in our first steps in our manifesto that we'll crack on with if we get elected on July 4th.
And Gareth?
difficult one to do in 90 seconds. So,
Well, yeah. I'll give you a little bit more time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's constantly works as well there. Oh, point at you now. Illegal immigration and legal immigration are very two different issues, so I'm going to answer them separately if that's okay. Illegal immigration is very serious, partly because of the numbers of people currently coming into the country illegally, but really it's not about numbers, it's about the fact as a country we must be able to police our borders and make sure we're in charge of who's coming in and who's not. One of the reasons that small boat crossings, you know, I've seen a lot of that in the news, the small boat crossings, is a big one everyone talks about. It's partly because a lot of people used to come through the Channel Tunnel, but we actually managed to crack down on it and much tougher, so now we're finding people coming through a different way. So there's always been a long-term problem with these things, but we certainly need to address it. There's three things we need to do, and there's three things we need to do, I think. Three of the two are already there. One is we need to terror, because I used to work for a charity that tries to disrupt human trafficking and people smuggling, which is when people are tricked out leaving their home country because they're promised a better life, effectively, whereas they might end up in forced slavery or other forms of forced domestic labour or abuse. And what's happening at the moment is a number of gangs are lying to people, telling them that they're going to end up in the UK, they trick them to take their lives into their hands and get on a small boat. So we need to send a very loud and clear deterrent that that's not what's going to happen. If you end up in the UK illegally, you won't stay here, and that's the Rwanda policy. Now Rwanda, even though no one has been sent there, realistically if Labour get in, no one will, because it will be stopped, that's already working. We're already seeing that deterrent bring down a number of people trying to cross on small boats. The second thing we need to do is address it at source, to use the expression they use in France, to work with the French to stop them being on boats in the first place. We've done that and we funded it. Now the third thing, and I need to be really honest with you here, because I'm going to tell you what I would do as the third thing if I was elected. This is not Conservative Party policy, so I need to be honest with you about this. This is what I would personally campaign for. Is because some people who are coming on small boats have a valid asylum claim, but they have no other way of getting here, we do need to look at creating what they call a few more legal safe routes, so people who are genuinely fleeing from persecution can come here safely and legally and have their asylum case held, or have their asylum case come into the UK held somewhere else. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the UK, but there needs to be a legal safe route. On legal migration, hello, Holly, on legal migration, that's quite a different issue. At the moment, it's been very high, partly because we have welcomed a number of people from Ukraine who have been victims of this terrible war waged by Putin. Now, I'm glad we did that. I support we did that, but I do accept that 800,000 people a year coming in is too high and is unsustainable. So we've introduced some measures that are pretty tough, actually, that are going to bring that down to about 300,000. So we've raised the threshold of the amount of money you need to earn to come in here, to come to this country. We've cracked down on having people students allowed through with them when they come in. They're pretty tough. And that will bring the numbers down by about half, maybe to about 300,000. But if you want a moment of real political honesty, if we do want, and this is for your generation to decide, if lower immigration than that is desirable, the only way we can do that is to change the way we teach skills, so we're teaching more technical skills in this country that the economy needs, so we don't just bring them in from overseas, and we need people to have more children, because no growing economy ever can grow without more and more people constantly be added to. Now that's a big conversation, and it's for your generation to decide. If you want to, what my generation did, and not have, I'm a hypocrite by the way, I've got no kids, I have absolutely no intention of changing that plan. But if you want to do what my generation did and have less kids, you will need immigration. If you don't do that, I'm afraid your alternative is to make more here.
Okay, thank you. Holly, massive welcome to Lipson. Thank you for we've had an awful journey here. I think it's only fair just to give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself on behalf of the We've then got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to be really harsh. We're going to go to, we said no yes or no questions. I'll respect that, but we're going to go to 30-second answers. So you're welcome. But it's up to you, can I do it from your seat up here? A couple of minutes? Are yours?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for hosting us, first of all, that's great. And I'm really sorry I was late. There was a huge crash on the A38, so about an hour and a half delay. So what can I tell you? Well, first of all, for me personally, the most important group of people to speak to are young people, and I can tell you why, because I remember what it was like being in your shoes, I remember what it was like with all these options in front of you, and not knowing which way to turn, or being really inspired, but maybe questioning yourself, and lots of other pressures and opportunities. I'm a parent, I've got 2 kids, one's 10, one's 16, so sort of almost where we are here, and probably where we are in some regards. A little bit about me. So I stepped into being a Liberal Democrat candidate after approaching 15 years of working in human rights. So my background has been focused on quite a variation of different areas, but I've worked with governments across the UK, and I've focused very, very much so on young people, children and young people's rights. That's been medical, it's also been educational in a regional area. So regional meaning in Devon, but nationally and internationally on children's rights to do with equality and diversity. And that's actually been quite it's been really exciting and really positive. So I started an NGO, which is a non-government organisation, and that was solely to support the rights of young people. So being here today is really important. And part of my journey, if I think back to when I was your age, I can remember, I would never ever have thought that as I went through my life that I'd be doing the sort of things I did. So my big message to you initially is keep those options open. Believe in the impossible because it is completely achievable. It really is an incredible opportunity. There's so much out there for you. The reason Lib Dems are here today is because historically we're one of the parties that's offered the most equality and diversity and inclusivity in the country. We've got amazing opportunities for young people as they develop, and that includes supporting families, ensuring there's better funding going to families, ensuring there's significant more funding going into schools. So, for example, SEND is a really big area I've worked on, special education needs and disabilities. A report came out today, and it said that from an organisation that's run by parents and barristers, so legal experts, and it said that just under 20% of people in education have got SEND needs. And schools are under huge pressure to meet your needs. So what is really needed is for the government to start supporting schools better, not to be closing establishments like the current government, the Conservative government's done, not to reduce funding, because actually you are the most important people. Whatever your needs are, whatever your dreams are, you are the ones that are important. What also matters is what happens when you're going through school. So I think without sort of highlighting too many challenges, mental health is a really big problem that affects a lot of people. It just affects you as you're getting older anyway, because that's part of your change, your diversity as you get older. But a lot of people also have to struggle with unexpected issues in their lives. So a Lib Dem government would put a mental health expert into every single school, and a hub that was accessible by everybody in every community. And then when you get to school and you're working through school, wouldn't it be great if schools got more funding? If schools got better funding for teachers, for trainee teachers, if classes were smaller, and if the curriculum was so much wider, so you had more opportunities, so the arts, so what they call the gig economy, so that, social media, digital marketing. I mean, it's so important to recognise that we're moving into a world that is it's filled with so many opportunities for you. And we have to meet those opportunities as a government. That's our job, is to support you all. And then when you finish school, what do? Do you go to college? Do you do work experience? Do you get a traineeship? At the moment, the cost cutting and funding by the current government is obscene, it's terrible. And that means your opportunities are significantly reduced. So what we want to do is challenge the current government, and we want to offer greater opportunities. That means if you want to do something that requires hands-on work, working with an employer, not only do you get the opportunity to do that as an apprenticeship, but you actually get paid a minimum wage too. At least a minimum wage. How great would that be, that you get an opportunity to work with incredible companies and you also get paid for it? And what about sports? The lack of funding in sport, and I just mentioned creative arts. I'm sure there's so much talent in this room in other areas. So all those areas need to be funded properly for your future and your opportunities. I could talk to you a lot about policies, I could talk to you a lot about improving the structure that you come to on a daily basis and the payment that staff get. But what's really, really important, more than any of this, and that's why everyone in this room is here, is because of your future. So that's what I want to do, and that's what 15 years of my background has spent doing for kids with other organisations and charities globally. And I will do everything I can, absolutely everything I can, to keep young people in mind, and that means treating everybody fairly and equally. So that means you might have a need that differs from your need, and that's what we have to hold and support, and we're going to do that.
Thank you very much. Just a quick round of applause. We've got 5 minutes to do try and get through 5 questions. We've got 5 minutes. 30 seconds maximum. Jake, then Charlie. Jake, either of your questions, whichever one. Either of your questions, whichever one.
Would your party ever support rejoining the
Gareth, you want to start with that?
No, never under any circumstances.
That's a nice easy answer. Holly?
Well, I don't think we can go back to where we were, but to be honest with you, it's massively important. I totally disagree with the Conservatives. Building unity between different countries means you can then, we're looking at a policy where people under the age of 35 can travel, can work, can explore other countries, and you get the right to do that. That's so important. It's massively important for your futures, and yes, we support that 100%.
Thank you. Luke?
We won't be rejoining the single market or the customs union for the Labour government, but what we will be doing is improving the deal so we can get reducing the paperwork and the massive amount of costly bureaucracy that now we have to export and import stuff, to make sure that live music can be taught and to support young people being able to travel around the EU. So the deal we've got at the moment is rubbish, and we need to make it better. But the next 5 years looks the same, whether you want to go further out of the European Union or further in. We've got to make Brexit work, and that's the challenge that we've got for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Charlie?
What do you view as the biggest problems facing the NHS? How would you see the
Holly, do you want to go first on this one? The NHS, biggest problem?
Oh, I'll tell you the biggest problem. Speak from my heart, okay? The NHS has been forced into privatisation. Can I tell you what that, not to patronise you, but hey, what that means is if you have a department here that's delivering service to so many people, okay, and that department doesn't get enough funding to do it, what the current government says is simple: you're not meeting your requirements, you're not delivering. Guess what they then do? Put it out to the private sector, so individual private companies who deliver your NHS. That's not acceptable because private companies are solely about profit, and that means profit above your welfare and health. That's not acceptable.
Thank you. Luke?
The waiting list has clogged up our entire system at the moment, and we need to make sure we're bringing them down. It's on a glide path to get to 10 million in the next couple of years. That is if we're speaking more long term, our NHS needs to be reformed. So instead of just having services at the big acute hospitals, so like Derriford and Trelisk in Cornwall, we need to make sure that we're getting primary care, so we can be able to see a GP. We need to make sure we've got NHS dentists, which we train in Plymouth. We're amazing at training dentists, but we're appalling at employing them here. So we've got to push the services to make sure we're into prevention and supporting an increasingly older population. So lots of big challenges, but if we don't bring down the waiting lists, we're going to see that entire system clog up.
And Gareth?
So I disagree quite a bit with Holly, because this isn't about an ideology, this is about what works. I wear an insulin pump that keeps me alive. It was made by a private company. I'm very grateful for it. So I don't think we should be too purist about how we deliver the best healthcare. We just need to deliver the best healthcare that keeps people like me living. Waiting lists are far too high. During COVID, unfortunately, about 6 million appointments got displaced across the system. We've got to work them out. The really crucial thing I believe in is freeing up GP appointments, your local doctor, by making it possible for pharmacists to give people more treatments. They're highly skilled, and we take more advantage of them. That will create more GP appointments, and if we use technology better as well, people like me who are happy doing stuff online don't need to see the doctor, so that older people who do want to have that face-to-face can have that face-to-face meeting.
Thank you. Last 2 questions. Keela, then Scarlett. I think we'll finish with 2 questions rather than giving you another 2 minutes to sum up your
Yeah.
So Keela, then Scarlett.
How do you plan to reduce homelessness during the next parliament?
Luke, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, so homelessness is a political choice. We nearly got rid of it entirely under the last Labour government. The Tories did it under the COVID. You can stop rough sleeping, right? You can fund the sport that gets people off the streets. But homelessness is more than just about sleeping. And we have thousands of people in Plymouth who are not in a permanent home. We need to build more homes. You can't have a housing crisis unless you build more homes. That's why I want to see 1.5 million homes built across the country, more in Plymouth, especially at affordable levels. But you deal with homelessness by dealing with rising costs and supporting those individuals in those situations. Better mental health support. For some people in Plymouth, that's drug and alcohol addiction support as well. But making sure that everyone can have a roof over their head. A housing first approach, but the first thing you do is make sure people are housed and we support them afterwards. That's the right approach to what we're trying to do in Plymouth, but we need the support and funding from government to do that. And that's hopefully what we'll get with the Labour governments.
Thank you, Gareth.
When I was younger, in my 20s, I spent many years working with a homeless charity, and it was an eye-opening experience of sitting with homeless people night in, night out, and hearing their stories and recognising the needs that led them to that place were highly complicated. Luke's right, addiction could be a big issue, family breakdown, marriage breakdown is a huge issue, mental health is absolutely massive. So I don't believe that it's easy to solve. I don't believe that you can just throw money at it, although money is important and it's solved overnight. We need a much more joined up, broader conversation about the real issues and start addressing them, and it won't come quickly in spite of what we're doing.
Holly?
It's a really important question, and to be honest with you, it shocks me to hear the answer you've just heard. It's the Tory government that's made homelessness illegal under the Vagrancy Act. That's shocking. How can you make someone illegal, a criminal, by being homeless? That is disgusting. That's not the government I want to be governed by, and I hope you don't either. What we would do is fund mental health, because as some of you may know, trying to get an appointment with council through your friends, their appointments with council is impossible. Yeah, you might get to meet someone for 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, and then no treatment. Not because they're not great people, because the current government has cut it so fine financially that there is no mental health support out there. And I agree with what Luke said actually. Drug, alcohol, and also life challenges are usually what sends most people into a homeless state. We can't see them as criminals. We have to care.
And final question, I think, from Scarlett, please. I think you might have to do it again, Scarlett, sorry.
Would you support free public transport for children with benefit the system currently in place in London?
Free public transport. Gareth, do you want to start this one?
I think if that would be a Plymouth City Council issue, I think we'd probably realistically have to look at targeted support rather than a blanket thing, because your budgets are tight and they're going to remain tight for a while. So what is absolutely crucial is the financial factor for being able to just get into school and enjoying their education. So I think we have to look at it case by case. There's already a lot of support, but that's not to say that it's always working and it's always reaching everyone. So if it's not, we need to identify those issues and make sure it works properly.
Holly?
I think transport to further education and schools should be free. I don't think you should be charged to get going there. I think it's absolutely essential that you bear in mind what we've all called the cost of living crisis, which has occurred through the Tories' brutal privatisation and profiteering that we all face now. Pretty much all of our families are probably struggling, which is why transport becomes an issue. But absolutely, yes, you should have free transport to your college, to your school, and I fully support that. Great question.
I'd love to. I'm afraid the money's not there after 14 years of cuts and the government crashing the economy, so I'd like to. But that's a real challenge. What we do need to make sure is that we've got buses in the first place, because in Plymouth we've lost an enormous number of bus routes. So while school buses may still be there, the school bus may be the only bus that runs on that route now, because we've lost the bus subsidy, we've lost the routes. So maintaining the routes is really important. So what we want to do as a party is put the powers to decide where the routes go. Instead of being in a private company, they just put them where they make profits or where they're paid to do it. So allow local councils and communities to specify where the routes go. So it's important that we get people to be able to go to school, but it's also important we get people to be able to go to work, especially working in the hospital and different shifts, or early to get to the town to work in the city centre. So we need to make sure we've got enough buses, and at the moment we're seeing fewer buses. So there's a real challenge as to how we stabilise that, stop the cuts, specify where the routes go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your candour and your honesty. I feel really proud today. I'm hoping that this group of young people have just kind of flown the flag. They get a lot of bad press. Our young people are interested in politics. They are interested in what happens in the world. and you've made me really proud today, guys. As we finish, has anybody got one last burning issue? It's your last chance. Go on, Ben. Seeing as you've come back, especially having finished his A-levels last week, I'll let you have the final say.
So, as I said, I'm 18. I've just finished my A-levels. I'm starting university in September. Will any of your parties commit to scrapping tuition fees? And if not, what will you do to support university students?
20 seconds. Holly.
Libden's historically got bad press because we went into government a long time ago and we pushed forward to try and scrap tuition fees. We were the junior partners of the government. That didn't go ahead. The reality of the situation is that actually universities do have to charge. They do, because they've been set up like a business. But what we need to do is ensure that it's affordable and that there are maintenance grants reintroduced, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at reintroducing maintenance grants so that if you're struggling financially, it's not a preventative issue if you're getting into higher education, but don't forget you also have further education.
Luke, really quickly, please.
No, we can't afford to do so. There's not the money to be able to do it. It costs tens and tens of billions to get your tuition fees. We do need to stop universities going bust, which we're in danger of seeing. So in the next 6 months, we're expecting some universities to go bust because they haven't got the support we need to get there. We need to help with drive down the cost of living pressures, and we also have a plan to make it fairer about repayments. Because when the government moved repayments onto commercial rates, the interest really went up. That created a real challenge. So we need to make that a fairer system at the end. But we'll only promise what we know we can afford. I'm not going to tell you something that we can't afford to do.
And Gareth, final word for you.
That popped up, I don't think we saw.
No.
Was a young lady on the front row, and it'd be great to hear the question.
Go on.
Sorry, is that okay?
Of course it's okay. I didn't see who had their hand up though.
What would you do for families to support them?
What would you do to support families? Luke.
So I think the family is the basic unit of society. I won't tell you what your family should look like. Every family should be different and every family should be supported. The biggest thing that you can do to help families at the moment is with the cost of living pressure, and what we want to do is bring down gas and electricity bills. That will enable families to have more money to pay on rent and mortgages, to get some economic stability back into our system. That would make a big difference.
So the key thing is to make sure that what people have paid rises and increases higher than the prices of everything they've got to spend out on us, because that way families get more money in their pocket. It's been a really tough few years where that hasn't happened. We've taken some tough decisions that mean that's happening now, and as the months and years go on, people will feel more and more they've got more money in their pockets, they can spend on the things that really matter to their family.
And Holly.
Well, I'd say, I'm sorry, but in response to what we've just heard, the reason things are very expensive at the moment is because we've got a Tory government who's running the country. And quite frankly, the cost of living crisis is causing...
Just to Conservatives.
You've had your time, I've just finished, sorry if I may, and then please respond at this time. I think what's really important is that actually families are valued, and I agree with what Luke said. However a family looks, they should be valued. It's really important that people can afford utility bills, that new homes that are built are net zero, which means they cost far less to run, and that, for example, water companies, we would put into, make them a public benefit company. That would mean that you wouldn't be purely paying profit to big shareholders and CEOs, and we would push very hard with green energy to make sure that families got better affordability and better value out of the key costs that they face.
Thank you so much.
Great question, thank you.
Yeah, it was a lovely question to finish with. Thanks again, guys. I'm just going to ask you to stay seated for about 10 seconds, and nobody wants to try and take a photograph with it. Can you just join me, please, and give our three candidates a few hands?